Morning as we go to the Chitas of today. Today is Thursday, the 24th day of Kislev. We're holding the portion of Ayeshev, the story of Yosef. We're holding on chapter 39, the book of Bereshis, in the book of Genesis, chapter 39, verse number 1. Yosef huda Mitzrayim, and Yosef came down to Egypt. Vayikeneu Peitifas Rispare, and Potiphar, Pharaoh's chamberlain, the chief of the slaughterers, Sarat Tabachim, Ish Mitzi, who was an Egyptian man. Miyad Shmein, he bought it from the hands of the Ishmaelites, Asher Hidid Mitzrayim, which brought him down to Egypt. Now she says the Torah, after ending off the story of Yehuda, returns to Yosef, even though Yehuda's story is many years' story, as he had children and they died, and then so this was a long story. But he comes back to Yosef, to the previous topic. He goes back to when he comes down to Egypt, which is interrupted with the story of Yehuda selling Yosef, to imply because of him, Yosef, the brothers, demoted him from his position, as Rashi said before. And the story of the incident of Potiphar's wife with the incidents of Tamar, why did the Torah put together these two women? Yesterday, the story of Tamar, who wanted to have a child with Yehuda, with the family Yehuda, and ultimately with Yehuda himself. And Potiphar also wanted to have a child with Yosef. To tell us the greatness of these women, they would not just wanted to have a relationship. To tell that these women were also special women. They meant for the sake of heaven, even Potiphar's wife. So to the one incident, Potiphar's wife was meant for the sake of heaven. Why? Because she saw through her astrology that she's destined to raise children with Joseph. So she saw that in her, she had some insight in this situation. So she thought that it was her that's going to come through her, but she didn't realize it's going to come through her daughter. That her daughter is going to marry Yosef ultimately, and she's going to have grandchildren through him, not children but grandchildren. Hashem says to God with his Yosef, Ish Matzliach, who is a man that was great, extremely successful. And he was in the house of his master, the Mitzri. And his master saw him that God was with him. Whatever he does, the Eibishter is prosperous in his hand. What does that mean? Kashem itay. This is something we all should learn. Shem shamayim shaga b'fiv. The name of God was always on his tongue. When a person asked him, how was he? Baruch Hashem. When a person asked him, are you going to be there? Be'ezat Hashem. Everything he said was Hashem. And Yosef found favor in his eyes. And he served him. And Potiphar made him the ruler over his house. And everything that he had, he gave, put his entire household in his hand. Verse number 5, and it came to pass when he was appointed over him over his house. And everything that he had, and the Eibishter blessed as Beis HaMitzri. And the Eibishter blessed the house of the Mitzri, Beglal Yosef, because of Yosef. He birchas Hashem, and there was a blessing on this house, on Potiphar's house. Anything this guy had in the field, inside the house, outside the house. And he put everything that he owned in the hand of Yosef. He never oversaw him. Besides the bread that he ate, and Yosef was handsome feature, a beautiful complexion. Now she says he did not pay attention to anything except the bread. Now she says the bread means his wife. He said, everything is yours besides my wife. The Torah talks in a nice way. It doesn't say your wife. So therefore, the Torah says his bread. So this is a medrash. As soon as Yosef found himself in a position of a ruler, he began eating and drinking and again curling his hair. So he again decided to go back to himself. And that's why the Holy One, blessed be he, said, your father is in mourning, and you are curling your hair. Okay, I'll incite the bear against you. And that's what the Torah continues. Tomorrow, immediately afterwards, the wife of Potiphar's, his master's wife, lifted up her eyes towards him, and everything went downhill. And that completes the Chumash for today. We are now going to the start of Tanya again, all the way from chapter 1. And even if you didn't forget last year, the Tanya, nevertheless, we need to learn something new every year. When we learn Tanya, we need to learn something new from the Tanya that we learned today. And that's why the Frierdiker Rebbe was masakin, made a takana that every Jew should first learn Chumash every day and Tanya every day, that we should take from the Tanya and from the Chumash something for the day. So we're going to start the Tanya, Perek Aleph, the first chapter of Tanya. Tanya, we learned it's called Tanya because of the beginning of Tanya. Really, it's called the Likutei Amarim, a compiling of sayings, and it's called Sefer Shel Beinoni, the book of the middleman. But it got the name the Tanya because of the beginning, the first word of it, Tanya. Like we see in the Chumash, the name of the Seder is usually like one of the first words of the Seder. So here the Tanya got its name because of the first word, Tanya. Tanya means we have learned. In essence, that's the whole concept of the Tanya, is the whole concept we have learned. Tanya, we have learned. If you're the whole concept of the Tanya is that you should learn. That everything needs to be Chabad, everything needs to be in a concept of wisdom, of understanding, and of knowledge. So everything needs to be learned. That's Avodas Atzmai. That's the Avodah of a Yid, to learn. And by his learning, Talmud Torah, Keneged Kulam, the learning of Torah, the more he will learn, the more he will ultimately have an effect on him. So Tanya, B'Sefer Gimel Nida, we learned in the Tanya, in the chapter, end of chapter 3, Mashbiyim Oisei. There's an oath that is administered to him. Gemara says there that before a Jew is born, the neshama is called up for the chamber of souls, is called up to God, and the court Lamaila, and they make him make a vow. They make the neshama do a vow. And they administrate an oath to him in heaven. The neshama is administered this oath in heaven, charging him, Tihi tzadik v'alti rasha. You should be righteous and not wicked. Even if the whole world is going to be dancing after you and say that you are the most wonderful guy, you are the righteous guy, you tells you that you are righteous, regard yourself as wicked. So the soul of a Jew descends into a body for a purpose in order to fulfill a specific spiritual mission in this world. He's inspired the mission, he's given the mission when he's in heaven to enable him to fulfill this, because when he's given this mission before he comes down in this world, to be able to fulfill this, a heavenly oath is administered on him, that he be righteous and not wicked. Because if he's going to be wicked, he won't surely be able to fulfill this mission. And as we're going to learn, righteous and wickedness doesn't mean Avedas. It means that you should have a positive attitude and not a negative attitude in a simple way. And so there's more concepts to it. But in a very simple, we did tzaddik. Don't take everything in a negative way. You have to take it in a positive way. And therefore, if you can take things in a positive way, you're going to overcome your own midas rois. You're going to overcome your own negativity. You're going to be able to do your mission. If you're going to fall into the world's negativity, you're not going to be able to do your mission. That's a simple concept. So, to enable to fulfill it, the heavenly oath is administered to him that you be righteous. And concurrently, that he regard himself as wicked and not righteous. At the same moment that he's told to be righteous, he's told those to remember that if the world is going to say, wow, here's this righteous guy, always feel yourself that you're not complete. The mission has not been complete. That's really the truth is the mission is not complete until we complete the mission, until you change the world. So therefore, you haven't completed the mission. The root sava, the root word is sava, is masbiim, is the oath administrated, is virtual identical to the root sava, which is the verb masbiim. Masbiim is to be satiated. Accordingly, the oath charging him to be righteous may also be understood that mean that the soul is thereby invested, it's sated, it's given power, with the power that enables it to fulfill its destiny in life on earth. The soul is given a mission, and it's given all the tools to this mission. It's given all the capability to this mission. But ultimately, it comes in a body. And the body is going to give him these two challenges of being positive or being negative, being righteous or being wicked. So that's what happens. The Gemara says in Nida that happens before the Neshama comes down to the world. So we have to understand this mission. Tnan, we learned in another Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, chapter 2. It says, Valtia Rasha b'fnei atzmach. Be not wicked in your own estimation. That's what the Mishnah says. Person is not allowed to feel wicked. So that's a contradiction. How then can we say the oath is administered to the soul to regard itself as wicked when this directly contradicts a Mishinic injunction not to regard themselves as wicked? There's no law, ain adam mesim atzmei rasha. There's a law that a person cannot come to court and say, I'm wicked. You only have to have you need two witnesses that make you wicked. Because a person is not going to make himself wicked. Also, the Alter Rebbe says there's a practical problem with feeling what if a person is going to walk around wicked. That's the problem with guilt. If you're going to walk about with guilt, then you're going to be grieved at your heart and depressed. It'll make you depressed. If you're going to think that, if I'm going to think that I'm wicked, and I have to feel that I'm wicked, so then it's going to affect me. It's going to affect me. It's impossible that I should think that I'm wicked and not affect me. It's going to affect me. And it's going to affect me that what? Either I'll be depressed or I'll be grieved. And what's going to happen when a person's depressed? And when you're depressed and when you're grieving, you cannot serve God joyfully. Content heart. So apart from the previous mentioned contradiction of the Mishnah, an additional question out there says, how is it now raised? A cardinal principle in the service of God is that it be formed with joy. Joy at the privilege of serving him, either through performing positive commandments or refraining from prohibited commandments. How then can one acquire to take an oath to consider himself wicked when this will cause him to be depressed, making him impossible to serve God with joy? It's a simple question. Furthermore, just as the first part of the oath, be righteous and not be wicked, is vital to the success in realizing his life mission, so too the fulfillment of the second part of the oath, that he consider himself wicked, is imperative. Right? It's two oaths. It's in essence, you have two oaths. In essence, the Gemara says you have the oath of being righteous. Of being right, not wicked, and the oath of not feeling yourself righteous. So those are contradiction oaths. That's a paradox. How do you put the two together? Because they're both important. How can this possibly be so when such an attitude hinders his joy in the service of God? We're chassidim. We have to be happy. We have to be joyful. So you might say, don't worry. And if your heart will not be grieved by this self-appraisal that you're wicked, meaning if we should propose that in order to fulfill the oath, a person will indeed regard himself as wicked, But at the same time, who resolved that his wickedness shall not perturb him. Who cares, right? So I have to be happy. So what do you want for my life? The Eibush says, God says I need to be happy. So if God says I need to be happy, so I don't care that I've sinned. So not to encumber his joy and service of God. But that's a negative. Now we'll come to irreverence. God forbid. Irreverence, indifference. That's the most biggest struggle that we have in life is our indifference. We don't take things to heart. We don't realize the importance of life. We take life for granted. And that is the worst thing that a person can have is irreverence, taking everything for granted. Nobody cares. There's no purpose. Everything is fine. No. There needs to be by such an attitude with sin, perturb him not at all. For although his original resolve is not to be wicked, will not perturb him, stems only from his sincere desire to serve God with joy. Yet such a resolution may even well lead to the situation where wickedness will truly not disturb him. How do you put all this together? How do we bring about to understand all this whole concept of these two important vows that are ministered to a soul, that he should be righteous and not wicked, and at the same time he should always feel that he is wicked. To explain the above matter will come clearly understood after preliminary discussion of the true meaning of what is righteous and what is wicked. So before we go into the concept to explain that you are given the capability to be righteous, and even though you have the capability of righteous and you are righteous, you should feel like wicked. What is righteous and what is wicked? What is the meaning in the Torah? One that is righteous and one that is wicked. In the Gemara, find in the Gemara, hey Chalukas, find the Gemara that says there are 5 different kinds of people. Tzaddik v'tevlei v'tzaddik v'ralei. You want to find distinctive types: a righteous person who prospers, materially as well as spiritually. He knows only good. That's a righteous person that prospers. Yosef tzaddik, everything he does is good. Tzaddik v'ralei, a righteous man who suffers, meaning in both the material as well as spiritual. That's an interesting kind of category. If you're righteous, why do you suffer spiritually? It doesn't make sense. You're righteous. So how is it possible to be righteous? I can tell you to suffer materially, but how does a righteous man suffer spiritually? He's not yet vanquished his evil, and that's the meaning. A righteous man may be a person that doesn't do evil, but he hasn't vanquished evil. 2 different concepts. Vanquished evil is much more deeper than just not doing evil. So you can have the concept of righteousness, that I'm not doing anything wrong, and at the same moment, I have the capability to do wrong. And in the material sense, too, he is wanting. Then you have a Rosh of a Tevla, you have a wicked man who has good. And you have a Rosh of a Raleigh. You have a wicked man who suffers spiritually and materially. So you have the wicked man that also has some good. And you have the wicked man that is struggling even with the good that he has. And then you have the Beinoni. You have the middle man. The Beinoni. This is called Sefer Shel Beinonim. The man, the middle man. So there's 5 different kinds of people. Rasha v'tevloi, tzaddik v'tevloi, tzaddik v'raloi, Rasha v'tevloi, Rasha v'raloi, and a Beinoni. See, the Gemara explains, tzaddik v'tevloi, what's a righteous man who prospers, or that's good with him, is a tzaddik gomer. That's a complete tzaddik. So in essence, you have 2 kinds of tzaddikim. You have a tzaddik gomer, a complete righteous man, and a tzaddik she'ena gomer, He's a tzaddik in the working. He's not complete. He has not vanquished his evil. So therefore, even though he does everything correctly, he still has evil. So once we achieve this level, right, is it going to be tzaddik? So once he achieves this level, physical suffering to cleanse his soul from impurities of sin is unnecessary. A complete tzaddik, as the Alter Rebbe is going to explain, has no Yetzer Hara. He has vanquished his evil inclination from his being. If you can imagine such a situation, he therefore prospers materially. That's why, by him, what means prospering materially? The materiality doesn't affect him. He prospers in everything. Everything is good enough for him. He has no need begashmis. His whole need is in spirituality. And therefore, nothing in the physical world affects him. He can live on the most minimum of minimum. That's the expression in Mishnah. Pas b'melech teichel. You drink, you can eat bread and salt, sleep on the ground. Ubatera ta'isa, can you learn Torah? That's it. That means he doesn't need the physical. He needs the bare minimum. The physicality, he's prospering in it. Not that he's feeling pain in the physical. He's actually prospering. He's happy. He's happy with the minimum. He's happy with a roof over his head and food. Extremely in the minimal sense. Then you have a tzaddik v'daloi. Then you have a tzaddik, righteous man who suffers. Is a tzaddik she'ein a gomer. That's an incomplete tzaddik. So he therefore experienced some measure of material suffering. The materiality does important to him because he has the Yetzer Hara. So he understands the material. Not an aveda, not doing sin. There's nothing to do with sin. But he understands the beauty of material thing, thereby cleansing his soul while it's yet clothed in his body, so that he will not have to endure any spiritual suffering in the world to come. So that's why he's a tzaddik v'dalei. That's why he has to go through some pain and suffering in this world. And he feels the pain of the physical world because by him, he still has the Yetzer Hara, so he has to cleanse that thing from him. According to the Gemara, is not referring to two tzaddikim on the same spiritual level. One whom prospers or the other suffers, that it speaks of two distinctive levels of tzaddikim. The Gemara does cites only two characterizations regarding the tzaddik: a complete tzaddik and an incomplete, imperfect. Complete and incomplete. The terms who prosper and who suffers do not indicate his spiritual level. They merely describe his resultant material status. And that's the point. These two people are doing the exact same thing. They're both spiritual people who serve God. Difference is that since the tzaddik she'ein a gomer, incomplete, he's still connected to he's more connected to the physical. Therefore, the physical is relevant to him. Even though we're not talking about any sins. He doesn't chashaton do a sin. Being involved in the material world is not a sin. But he's connected more to this physical. And therefore, it affects him, the physical. And he's involved with it. And therefore, it's important that there's some importance to it. And therefore, ultimately, he feels the pain of the negative in the physical, if there's some aspect of pain. That's why the expression tzaddikim mekablim yisurim ba'ava. Complete tzaddikim accept their pain with love. They don't feel the pain. They feel everything is God. There's nothing in the world that is not godly to them. So everything in the world is a godly expression, and therefore ultimately they are not affected by the world. They see the beauty in everything in the world. They're positively biased. Positive, everything is positive because by them is the neshama. The world does there a vessel, whether it's good or bad. Everything is there to be able to bring out something that is godly. and therefore they stayed unaffected by anything in the world. That was like Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. People that went through the world. As he expresses, they were a makava, they were the chariot of God, and they, as Alter Rebbe is going to explain later, the greatness of the Avos, that they were a charity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We can learn from the Avos what it means to be a human being and serve God without any hindrance. I mean, even though there are struggles in the world, as we know, we read the Parshas, they had struggles. And as Yaakov Avinu says, my beginning of my life was struggle, but it didn't affect him. It didn't affect his mission. The mission went on, and the accomplishment went on, because the world did not take space to him. It was there, but it was not there. It was there. Life is life. They lived in the world, but it didn't affect them in any way. They went through it. That's why it says the expression, by the patriarchs, they came and they went out, whatever their mission was, they accomplished. Because they went through all the struggles in a yasher way, in a straight way, to serve God. And then you have a tzaddik v'raloi. You have the tzaddik that he's righteous, but he's affected by the world. And he still has issues with the world that affect him in a negative way. And he has to work through it. But that's the truth is. That's why you have Avram, you have Yaakov and Yisrael. That's something that Chassidus explained. That Yaakov and Yisrael. Yaakov ultimately came Yisrael. But Yaakov doesn't disappear because there's some tzaddikim that still have Yaakov in them. So you can have a Yaakov and Yisrael together. Yaakov would change his name to Yisrael. But later on, the Pasha uses both names. The Torah continues to use both names. Because even you can have the concept of a tzaddik that has both entities. He has the Yisrael, he's victorious in everything, but you have the one he's still Yaakov sometimes. He still has the struggles of the holding on to the hill of the Esav. But when we go to Kabbalah, Rayim is Kabbalah. So it says over there in the portion of Mishpatim, it says, Tzaddik v'ralei sharasha be'kofla tegadai mehem. The Kabbalah explains the Gemara. What means that he has ra? If he's a tzaddik, how does he have ra? And if he has ra, then he's not a tzaddik. So the point is that the Kabbalah says that his evil is subservient to his good nature. He has evil, but it's totally subservient. What does it mean? He's a tzaddik who still retains some visage of evil, albeit subservient to his good nature. It's totally bottled to the good. Accordingly, a righteous man who prospers is a tzaddik whom there's only good. He doesn't have even evil. He has totally transformed his evil nature, if you can imagine such a thing. A tzaddik who has transformed his evil nature. His evil has become good. The tzaddik v'raloi, he has evil, but it's sleeping. According to the Zohar, which Rayim Mehem is a part, the term who prospers and who suffers also indicate and describe the level of the tzaddik. The tzaddik who prospers is a tzaddik to whom there is only good. So in essence, the Zohar goes a little bit deeper than the Gemara. The Zohar tells you what kind of person this guy's essence is. That's not the outer. The Gemara is talking more about the outer expression of the tzaddik. That he deals with the world, it doesn't deal with the world. The Zohar goes into the essence of the tzaddik and tells you that a tzaddik, complete tzaddik, he doesn't have a nefesh Bahamas. He doesn't have a Yetzer Hara. He has no Yetzer Hara. Prosper means he has the evil inclination, because basically his whole life is a godly soul. His whole life is in a godly experience. Again, it's not that he's going away from the world, because the tzaddik gomer is in the world, but it's a godly experience. By him, the whole life is a godly experience. He doesn't see the world as a physical world. He sees the world as a vessel to God. That's the way he sees the world. He sees the world as what he can do with the world in a godly way. He doesn't see the world in any other way. That's why you understand why a tzaddik, the Mesiras Nefesh of a real tzaddik, is to deal with people in the world, because he sees everything in a godly way. He doesn't understand. It's hard for him to understand the struggles of a regular person. But ultimately, a real tzaddik cares about people, so he lowers himself in a way. He breaks himself to come down to feel the pain and suffering of somebody else, which in essence, he sees the godliness. That's why it's a struggle. It's a big struggle to him. He's like, what? He's like, he sees the godliness in it, and the person that he's dealing with does not. They see the physical pain in it. And a tzaddik has to feel that. To try to inspire this yid, that even though there's physical pain, he has to see the purpose and he has to overcome this challenge. It's very hard for the tzaddik who sees it. That's an imagination. You can imagine Moshe Rabbeinu, the Jewish people. Moshe Rabbeinu saw the future, and he was dealing with people that were struggling with the present. And that's why Moshe Rabbeinu sometimes couldn't handle it. Because you can imagine Moshe Rabbeinu saw the beauty of everything, and he was dealing with humans that didn't see the beauty in it, that didn't see the future. They saw their present struggles, and they dealt with their present struggles. And they had a leader who told them, "Don't worry, let's keep on going, because we're gonna reach the ultimate level. We're gonna trust me. You'll survive this." Couldn't do it. And it was a big struggle for him. And that's why it was a big Mesiras Nefesh on Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why the Gemara says the entire Torah is called Moshe, because Masa Nafshela. Because Moshe Rabbeinu gave up his life. Moshe gave up everything in life. He gave up his own spiritual life, so to say, for the sake of Yid, for the sake of Jews, to lead the Jewish nation. He was the ultimate tzaddik. That's why he's called Moshe Rabbeinu. Because he was the ultimate one who gave up everything, which every tzaddik is a spark of Moshe Rabbeinu, the Zohar says, that give up everything. You should realize the greatness of tzaddikim. That's what the Gemara says. You stand up for the Torah. You should stand up for a tzaddik. You stand up for the Torah, you realize what a tzaddik is. Mesiras Nefesh is being, to be able to uplift another person, to be able to inspire another yid, that how much he has to give away of his own existence, his own spiritual existence. So that's what the Zohar explains of a tzaddik and a tzaddik she'ein goyim. If a complete tzaddik is a tzaddik who prospers, who is only good, and an incomplete tzaddik is a tzaddik who suffers, meaning retains some evil, why then is necessary to give each tzaddik two appellations? The explanation provided further is that each descriptive term denotes a specific aspect of the divine service of the tzaddik. The term complete tzaddik and incomplete tzaddik denotes the level of the service of the tzaddik's godly soul, meaning the tzaddik love of God. For it's by virtue of this love that he is called a tzaddik. The incomplete tzaddik is one who attains perfection, who has attained perfection. The complete tzaddik is one who has attained perfection in the love of God, in a manner of ava b'tainugim, love of delight, the serene love of fulfillment. Tzaddik who's ava b'tainugim is as yet imperfect, is called an incomplete, unperfect tzaddik. That's why it's hard to see between these two entities, the tzaddik she'ein goyim and tzaddik gomer, because it's his ava, it's his love. How do you know if this tzaddik has ava b'tanugim or doesn't have ava b'tanugim? Turn tzaddik who prospers and a tzaddik who suffers denotes a tzaddik stands as vice versa's effort in transforming his animal soul to holiness. For a tzaddik, through his lofty service of ava b'tainugim, transformed the evil within him to holiness and good. Now it's important. Why is it important? I'm not going to be a tzaddik. I would be a tzaddik b'tanugim. But the Rebbe explains that in essence we could attain in certain concepts to be a tzaddik gomer. If we can reach up to a certain concept, to have ava b'tanugim, to have a love of delight, not that we're doing it out of love of God, not that we're doing it, but we're having a delight in this. It's actually delightful. I'm actually enjoying it. That's ava b'tanugim. to serve the Eibush and Avatar. I can accomplish that in certain concepts in my life if I wanted to. The designation of tzaddik who prospers indicates that he already totally transformed his evil within him, and now good alone remains. Well, a tzaddik who suffers, they want to manage totally transformation of the evil within him to good, and therefore he doesn't have avad tanugim. He has love of God, but that delight. The explanation that follows makes it abundantly clear that the evil referred to here is no more than an forces of evil still harbored in the heart of the incomplete side. We're not talking about evil. We're not talking about evil, what we think as evil. Because the tzaddik never did anything evil. The point is that he has the capacity of evil. But the tzaddik has no association with the actual evil. God forbid. That manifests itself in the thought, speech, certainly not evil, finds expression, action. So therefore, this tzaddik who's incomplete never thought even about evil. Forget about never spoke evil, never did evil. He never even thought evil. It's thus that he has the capability of evil. That's why, as you're going to learn in Tanya, maybe your avodah in life is not to be a tzaddik. Not to be a tzaddik gomer, not to be even a tzaddik she'eina gomer. That's not my service. My service is to be a Beinoni. That's what this book is about. Not that I might never ever be able to be a tzaddik, that I never thought of a thing of evil, because I push it. Don't let even the potential of my evil come into existence, and that's why it says he's bottle. He's nullified. The tzaddik she'eina gomer, his evil is at sleep. He's in a coma. And that's what the Gemara says, that nobody should trust himself to the day he dies. Even a tzaddik, since he doesn't know, since if you're not a tzaddik gomer, he should never trust himself to the day he dies, because it's possible to come out of the coma. Gemara say perek tested brachas, and then the Gemara gives another analogy to a tzaddik. And the Gemara says, the Talmud says, the 10th and 9th page of the brachas, tzaddikim yetzet tzeif shoftam. The tzaddik is judged by their good nature. The shoyim yetzet hara shoftam. Now that gives you a more practical analogy. The difference between a tzaddik and the Yirasha is that who are you judged by? Are you judged? And we'll soon see what that means, who you're judged by. You're judged by your good. You're motivated and ruled by the good nature. The good nature having the final say. That means judged, as we're going to learn. The wicked are judged, motivated, and ruled by their evil nature. Their evil nature having final say. Beinanim, what's a middleman? Zev v'zeh shoftim, are judged by both. Good and evil nature, both of them have a say. Amar Rabba. So Rabba said in the Gemara there, he explained this to his students, and to give a show and tell, he said, he said, for example, I'm a Beinoni. So if you want to know what a Beinoni is, me. Look at me. Abaye said to his class. Rabba said to his class. And you'll know what a Beinoni is. Abaye reached his hand and said, Rebbe, if you're a Beinoni, then master, you make it impossible for any creatures to live with all Rishoyim. If you're the Beinoni, then we're wicked. So Abaye argues this. If you're a Beinoni, then all those that are on a lower level, then you fall into the category of a wicked person. Concerning which the sages says the wicked, even while alive, are considered dead, so all dead. You're killing humanity. You're killing all your students. By calling yourself a baby, you just make it impossible for it to live. Yeah, but you can be, but you're a tzaddik. To understand, the offer said clearly, an explanation is called for. So in addition to the question, which will soon follow, we're going to have a lot of questions, then we're going to get to the answers. Take us 53 chapters to get the answers. So according to the common conception of a Beinoni as a person having half mitzvahs and half transgression, how could the sage Rabbah mistake himself to be a Beinoni? Most of us think a middleman is half and half. If that's a Beinoni, that means that you have half sins and half deeds, good deeds and half bad deeds. Rabbah could not say that. If a Beinoni is simply one having half mitzvahs and half transgression, then his status is readily identifiable. There's no possibility, room for debate. So if Rabbah said he's a Beinoni, and if you're going to say that Rabbah meant that he's a sinner, everybody knows that. Everybody would know that. So what's Abaye's question? So self-understood that the real chokhmah is to find a difference between a Beinoni and a tzaddik. That's going to be the struggle. What's the difference between a Beinoni and a righteous man? Because what's a Beinoni? If Rabbah could say he's a Beinoni, and Abaye says, no, you're a righteous man, that means Rabbah thought himself as a Beinoni. He was not lying to himself. He thought himself as a Beinoni. We have to understand what also it's brought down in Eiv. Eiv says, the Beinoni Shalom, Master of the universe, Barasa Tzadikim, Barasa L'Shayim. You created righteous people. You created wicked people. Wait a second. That contradicts a different Gemara. The Gemara we learned in the beginning of Tanya. The Gemara over there says that they call up the neshamas from heaven. They tell the neshama exactly what he's going to do in life. Be healthy, wealthy, who he's going to marry, Baba. Tell him all the good things, all the good, the bad, and everything. And the Gemara says, but they don't tell him, are you going to be righteous or wicked? And that's why they make a vow. Everything else is preordained. Whatever your neshama is going to, whatever you're going to happen in your life, it's already, your neshama was told the whole journey. From day one till the end, until he's going to pass on. So the neshama knows exactly what is going to happen in his life. The good and the bad and the ugly. But the Gemara says there's one thing they don't tell the neshama. Are you going to be righteous or going to be wicked? Because that's your free choice. That's why you make a vow. So you don't have free choice in anything. That's why it says, Hakol b'dei shamayim. Everything is in the hands of heaven. It's preordained. Chutz mi yirat shamayim. Besides fear of God. So here, the fear of God, meaning your free choice to be righteous or to be wicked, is not being told. But you just said in Eiv that God created righteous and wicked. That means it's already preordained if you're righteous or you're wicked. So that's a contradiction. Right? So the Gemara relates, God decrees that the child about to be born will be wise, foolish, strong, weak, so on. The Gemara goes on exactly. God tells the neshama your journey, you're going to be rich, poor, you're going to have this amount of kids, you're going to go through this tzaras, you're going to have this thing, you're going to have that thing, whatever. This gives him his whole life. However, the child be righteous or wicked, God does not say. He said, that's your free choice. This is not predetermined. Rather, it's left to the individual's free choice. How then, you understand, is plain. You have created righteous men, and you've created wicked men. The most important thing of Tanya is to understand to understand the essential nature of the rank of a Beinoni. Now, it's an interesting expression over here, because we learned this already a lot, the mahus, the essential nature, the mahus, the ideas of mahus, ideas of matzias in Kabbalah, the knowledge of the essence and the knowledge of what is there. You can have a knowledge of what you see, and you can have a knowledge in the essence. And really, we need to have a knowledge more to induct into what we see. We need to understand a Beinoni, really the most of a Beinoni, more than anything else, because that's what we need to be. It's called the Sefer Shel Beinonim, the book of the middle man. So we need to know we need to take apart a Beinoni in all kinds of ways. In any way we can, we need to dissect this Beinoni. We need to go to the essence of this Beinoni to know exactly what it is and how it is and what's his DNA and what's his focus and what's his shortcomings and what's his strengths. We need to know the Beinoni to the essence. Not what it's not what it could be, but what it is mahus. What is the essence of this Beinoni? So the mahus of a tzaddik is righteousness. The mahus of a wicked man is evil, right? I mean, that's easy. So the mahus, the essence of a tzaddik is holiness. The essence of a rasha is the opposite of holiness. So what's the Beinoni? Is it a holiness? That's a tzaddik. It's unholiness. What is the Beinoni? What is the mahus? The essential nature of a Beinoni. This is, once we understand the mahus of a Beinoni, is really understanding who we are. What's our mahus? And therefore it's important to know what's our mahus, what's the DNA. Then we'll understand the successes and the shortcomings of this Beinoni, which both are good, as you're going to learn in Tanya. But we know for sure what it's not. You cannot say the mahus that the concept of a Beinoni is somebody who has 50-50 and good and bad. Shimkain, if you say that, can't say that. You can't say a Beinoni is a person who has 50% good and 50% bad. Because so, how did Rabba say, I'm the poster child of a Beinoni? I'm the example of a middleman. It's known that Rabba never ceased from the study of Torah. Rabba never ever stopped for a moment from repeating words of Torah, if you can imagine such a person. That the Gemara says that Shafilu Malach HaMavis, when the angel of death came to take his soul, could not take it because the Rabba was busy learning Torah, and the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, couldn't take his soul. He had to trick him into the whole Gemara, how he tricked him. Such as Rabba's diligence that he did not neglect his studies for even one moment. Rabba was a tzaddik. No question about it. No question. If you know Rabbi, you learn Gemara, Rabbi was a tzaddik. There's no question in anybody's mind. And that's why Abaya is, so to say, shocked. So Abaya says, impossible. Rabbi, you are not a Beinoni. So therefore, quantitatively too, we learned was so on a high plane that the angel of death was unable to power him, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu also, the angel of death could not take him. God took him. That's called the kiss of death. And the same thing happened with Rabbah. So how can Rabbah say, make this mistake and say, I am the Beinoni, I have half sins? So it's not possible. It's impossible to say that a Beinoni has half sins. But the truth is, as Alter Rebbe is now going to say, it's impossible to say a Beinoni has any sins. Because when you do a sin, when anybody does a sin, at that moment he's called a rasha. What makes a person wicked? How many sins do you have to do to be wicked? Is there a number? There's no such thing. There's no such thing in the Torah. If you do 50 Avedas, you're wicked. If you're 49, you're not wicked. You do an Aveda, you're wicked in the Torah. To that sin. To that sin, I've done. If I done it, I just spoke lashon hara. To that lashon hara, I'm wicked. I'm a wicked person to that aveda. There's no such thing as to every aveda I do, I'm wicked if I've done it. And if I did tshuva on that sin that I just did, I'm a tzaddik. I'm back to a tzaddik. And you might say, you know what? Maybe Beinoni doesn't do any Torah prohibitions. He makes sure not to do a Torah prohibition. But he does rabbinical prohibitions. He plays around with the rabbis. That's not true either. Mikir Rasha. In the Gemara says that even if you do a rabbinical prohibition, you're called wicked. In Masechta Yavamas and in Nida. Now, okay, let's say this is like this shows you who you really are. But no. So let's say we're not talking about a person who didn't do a Torah prohibition, didn't do a rabbinical prohibition. He did know with no sin. He saw another Jew doing a sin and he didn't do anything. See no evil. Gemara says whoever didn't do himself a sin, but he had an opportunity to forewarn another against doing sin, and he didn't do that. In the Gemara, in Masechta Shavuos, he's called a Rasha. Now we got a problem. And more so, if he neglected any positive law, which he's going to be able to fulfill. And which is that? Any person that can learn Torah and doesn't do it, it's too busy. I didn't do a sin. I just didn't do the positive. I didn't learn the Torah. I decided to read a book instead of opening a Chumash. It's very harsh words over here. But the Gemara also says, Ki Dvar Hashem baza. He has despised the word of God. Kaddish to Kaddish, it should be utterly cut off. Frightening words. Upshita de Mikra Rasha, it's such a person that doesn't learn Torah. And he could have, that's why the Gemara says, it's something, there are certain things that everybody falls into, everyday sins, that they don't learn Torah. When they could have learned Torah, they decided not to learn Torah. It's a sin that we all fall into. Upshuti de Mikra Rasha, so that's worse than not even doing a rabbinical, that's worse than doing a rabbinical prohibition. Because it doesn't say when you do a rabbinical prohibition, you cut it, you get cut off from God. No punishment for doing a rabbinical prohibition in the Torah. Okay, so therefore you must say now you understand the Muhusa. Now we have to really understand what a Beinani is. Because if so, a Beinani, according to what I just said, a Beinani is a person that never even stopped learning Torah. That's why Rabba said he was a Beinani. Rabba made that mistake. Rabba was not a Beinani. Rabba was a tzaddik. Rabba was a tzaddik gomer. Rabba made a mistake and said, I'm a Beinani. Because a Beinani never did a sin. Not even a sin of neglecting the learning of Torah. That's how Rabbi mistook himself. Rabbi made a mistake. Abaye rectified him right away. Said, you're making a mistake. You're not a Beinani, you're a tzaddik. So since a Beinani is innocent of even neglecting Torah study, Rabbi could mistakenly consider himself a Beinani. Even though he was scrupulous, observed even the most minor commandments, never ceased from the studies, he said, I'm a Beinani. What is written in the Zohar? He who has few sins is classified a righteous man who suffers. Oops, that contradicted everything I just said. Implying that even according to the Zohar, the meaning of a righteous man who suffers is one who does have sins. I just said a Beinani doesn't have any sins. Or by the few. If so, a Beinani must have one who has sins. So the Alter Rebbe answers that question. He shall us Rabbi Nuna Laliyo. This is the query. This was a question Rabbi Nuna asked Rabbi Laliyo. Asked that question. But according to Elijah, the prophet answered the question. The meaning of a righteous man who suffers, as I stated before, and I am quoted above. that he is the righteous man who suffers, the one with evil nature is subservient to his good nature. V'shivim panim l'Torah, and there are 70 facets, modes of interpretation. The Rebbe notes that the words and the Torah has 70 facets. It helps us understand Rabbi Nuna's query, because Rabbi Nuna asked a question. Rabbi Nuna was not a simple guy; he was a great sage. So even if Elijah rectified Rabbi Nuna, but Rabbi Nuna's question is a question. How did Rabbi Nuna have such a question? How did Rabbi Nuna question that a tzaddik, R'aleh, means a tzaddik has sins? How did he have that question? Everybody knows a tzaddik has no sins. So how can Rabbi Nuna ask that question? Helps understand Rabbi Nuna's query. It's difficult to understand how Rabbi Nuna would even entertain the notion that a righteous man who suffers is the one who actually sins. Because we thus explain that even a Beni doesn't sin. So how was his question? So much as all the above the mentioned question clearly leads us to assume the opposite. Rabbi Nuna's query, however, was prompted only by the fact that the Torah has 70 fasts. He thought that there's a possibility of these fasts. He thought maybe, that's what Rabbi Nuna said, maybe, he asked Eliyahu Navi, is there any way in the Torah that a tzaddik can sin? And Eliyahu said no. Eliyahu's answer, Rabbi Nuna, was, even though there are many ways of looking at the Torah, and maybe you're trying to find a way to explain a tzaddik, a tzaddik that's not complete, that he has maybe sins, I'm telling you, you cannot learn it that way. And that's Eliyahu's answer to him. That there's no way to learn that a tzaddik is a person that has any sin within him. My friend, the journey has begun. And this is where the Tanya ends today. And we didn't finish even the first chapter of Tanya, but we started our journey. And I think the most important part of at least by me, the important part of my journey in Tanya is to try again to find the Mahus of a Beinani, to find, because that's who I should want to be, Alavai Beinani, the expression, I wish I was a Beinani, to find and to work on how to become a Beinani, because it's myself, I'm not read Shittot Beinani. So my avodah in learning Chassidus is to be able to rectify myself, to be able to use my neshama in a better way in this world, to be able to be a better light in this world, my neshama, to lighten up my guf, and my chelki ba'olam, and my part of the world that I'm in, is to be able to find out better this year how to understand the Beinani, that I not only understand it in my mind, but it's machshava dibra maisa, that I can bring it down to chachma, bina, and das, my wisdom and understanding and knowledge, to be able to find out the mahus, my mahus of my Beinani, to be able to find out how I can be a better Beinani. And ultimately, by me becoming a Beinani, will do my mission in my life and accomplish that my light will shine better in this world, my avodah in this world. And that completes the Tanya today. Today is the 24th day of the month, which is chapter 113 to 118. I wish you all a wonderful, happy Hanukkah. Mitzvah, we'll meet each other tomorrow, 8 a.m. We'll continue to learn Chitas of the day, and I invite you today at 10 a.m. Either come Chabad or on this Zoom or on Torah Direct. We're going to learn a Sikh of the Rebbe, the portion of the week. Wish you all a wonderful and beautiful and happy day and a wonderful